Hello again. In the previous video we managed to get this list with live scores, and in today's video we're going to make it look much nicer, and we're also going to add the start times of the matches in the local time zone that we want it to be. But before that we need to make something, and what it is, we need to cache the responses that we get from LiveScore API into our database. Why do we need to do that? Well, we're actually getting three things out of it. And let's take a look at this small diagram here. If this is you or your user or many of your users, what happens is that the device here, whether it's a laptop or a mobile phone, sends a request to your server requesting live scores. And then your server sends a request to our servers that we want live scores. And then the data flows backwards. And this connection here between our servers and your server is there 99.9999% of the time. But what happens for the couple of milliseconds or seconds when this connection is down? Then your user experiences that there are no live scores and your service is broken. So in order to prevent that, we actually are going to cache the live scores and match statistics and everything else that we request in our local database. And it's a very simple database. It just has a URL, JSON that responds to this URL, and then the time when we last requested this data, so we can track it and then update it every 60 seconds. So now we solve this issue. The second thing that we gain out of it is that we save the time for this connection and response, because most of the time we're going to be getting the data from the database and then back to the user. And the third thing is your hourly quota. 100 people here, they all request live scores. Of course, we go 100 times here and then back to them. So you just spent 100 of your requests in 3 seconds, let's say, or 2 minutes, doesn't matter. But if they're cached here, then only the first request will go to our servers. So you will spend 1 request instead of 100. The following 99 people are going to get it from the database. And after some time, we're going to reset it. In our case, we will say 60 seconds. So how do we achieve this caching? Here, there is a small class that we added to our project. It will go also in the GitHub repository. We have a connection to MySQL database, but could be easily any other database. And we have this use cache function, which takes a URL, tries to find it in the database here, and if it finds time, JSON responds that it's still valid, meaning we have obtained it in less than a minute, then we can just use it. If not, then it's false. And of course, we need to call the servers. We also have the save cache function, which takes a URL and a JSON and accordingly updates or inserts in this table in this database, so then we can reuse it once we need it again. So how do we actually take advantage of this? We need to refactor this code a bit, and we're going to gain more things out of it, but now we're going to focus on the cache. So if we take this URL, that's the first thing, we can actually add it here as protected. Let's just call it base URL. And this section never changes. So once you're done with it, then you're all set. So we can leave it like this. But we need to build a different URL for every type of data that we want. So if we want live scores, we need to use the live scores API endpoint. If we want fixtures, we need to use the fixtures, and so on. So we're going to make a new function called build URL. And this function will take an endpoint as a parameter. And what this function will do is very simple. It's going to return the base URL. We have it here, together with the endpoint that we want. And finally, we're going to add the authentication part, so the key and the secret. Fix it. There we go. So now if we try out our page, it will be broken. We're not going to do that, but it won't work. And to do that, we need to make our official function for getting live scores, which we call get live scores. And here we can take advantage of the build URL function, and we want only this part with scores, JSON, and don't forget the question mark. So then these parameters can work correctly. But now the request doesn't happen, so we need to fix that. And to that we have to write a new function that I'll just call make request. And make request will take a full URL, and it will do exactly what here we're doing. I'm just gonna paste it here. But here we're going to add our caching. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to get the cache from our database. So we try to use the cache. And if there is cache, so it's not false, if it is false, then the cache is either not there or it's not valid anymore. It has been more than 60 seconds past. We will return it, and we don't forget to JSON decode. But what happens if we don't have a cache? Then we call the LiveScore API servers as we do right now. But before we return this information here to the cover, whichever that is, in this case it will be the get live scores function. First, we need to store it in the cache so we can then use it the next time. So it's a simple function call here. And the final step is that get live scores after building the URL just transfers the response from make request to the cover. And who is the cover? The cover is index.php. Here we can include our new class, make it official object here. And now our data will be instead using get live scores. So let's try this one out. Going back to our live scores, we refresh. The live scores refreshed, which means everything's working fine. And if we look in our database, we can see a new row, and it just happened now. And this is the JSON that we got from the LiveScore API servers. And in this case, the URL is a number, but this is simply because MySQL works much faster with numbers. So what we're doing in our code is we are converting the URLs to a number so we can work much faster with it. But this is totally up to you. Now in the future, when we request get live scores, things will happen much faster unless there has been a minute passed, and then we're just going to get the data from our cache. So as we keep working with this, you will notice that this number here, or the time, is going to change once we make a new request after a minute, like it just happened now, so 2 minutes after it. So now we want to make our live scores much prettier. To do that, we're going to use Twitter Bootstrap, and we're going to only need the CSS part of it. I'm just going to take on it, and I'm going to put it into our head section here. And if we refresh now, we can already notice that things are changing. We can already see things are improving, it looks much better. What we want to do now is put the content in the center of the page, put it into a table with nice borders, align it a bit, and then finally, of course, put the start time in the time zone that we want it to be. So what we're going to do now, we're going to wrap our table into a container. This is a standard Twitter Bootstrap class, which simply centers the content in the center of the table. You can already see things are centering. This is the container starts here and ends up somewhere here. But what we want to do is we want to put in the center, and we want to have some space here for the list of countries that we're going to add later on. And Twitter Bootstrap uses the concept of rows. And right now we only have one row, so we're just going to have one row here. And inside the rows we need to put cells. And in total we have the right of 12 cells. So for the countries we're gonna use, let's say, 3 cells. For the live scores that we already have, we're going to use 9 cells maybe. And then we leave 3 cells for something else after the live scores. In many cases, websites have banners and promotions and other links or articles on the right side. So we're just going to leave it like that. And now let's see how it looks. Right, much in the center. So now let's make this table bordered. I pretty much like bordered tables. And Bootstrap has this covered with this one as well. We just need to write the table bordered. And then I would like to make this like the header a bit better, so I would just add a bluish color to stand out from the rest of the content of the table. And then let's see how it looks. Amazing. So apparently, so we can just shrink this space a bit, and maybe this one. So we get relation mistake. This should be 6. And this should be 3. This should be 3. So now things should actually look much better. Be pretty centered. Yes, much better now. We want to improve some other things. We want to move this to the right side and this in the center, and then add a new column that will contain the start time. So let's just use this inline styling. It's not the best idea, but for the purposes it's okay. Text align right. And then we copy it. I'm gonna put it here, text align center. And let's make these bold, just so they also stand out even more. There we go. Super, that's what we want. Let's, before the time, the current time, let's call it TO, kickoff, and have it here. And for now, we're just going to use the scheduled field, which is our official field for the start time when the match started. And this time is always in UTC. If you want to use it in a different time zone than UTC, then you will have to convert it. And that's what we're going to do now. Let's convert now these kickoff times or start times to whatever time zone we want. And to do that, we're going to do it here. And let's say we're going to name a function called convert. And this function will take the time and a time zone and produce the time of the match within this time zone. And we make this time zone a variable because maybe in the future we want the users to be able to change the time zone in which they want to see the matches. So for now we're just going to call it Europe Madrid. And let's add a new file called functions.php. And here we make a new function that would call convert. As we said, it takes a time and a time zone. Yes. After some short search, I'm sure you're going to find example codes, but here we have this one that I took from Stack Overflow, so we can do this faster. So the date is actually today's date. It's always today's date. So we might as well just do it like this. And we want to add to it the start time of the match, and we don't forget to add the seconds. From time zone, we always work with UTC. and we want to convert it to this time zone, and right now we're just interested in the start time. Let's refresh and see what happens. Something got broken, and I figured out we actually forgot to include our functions. So there is no way for our script to know that there is a function that can convert dates. Let's try again. And now things have changed, and you can see that actually it moved a bit. So if we decide to change the time zone to something else, like Europe, Istanbul, then times change again. And this is the way to change time zones. Until next time.